Mother-in-law kicked me out in a storm over my sister's lies. She texted. That was perfect. Not realizing Dad was reading it on the TV. He filed for custody. At the age of 17, I was kicked out in the storm due to a falsehood perpetrated by my sister. My mother-in-law yelled, "Get out of my house." I didn't resist. I just walked away. 25 minutes later, she laughed about it in a text, unaware that Dad was reading it on the living room TV. The rain pounded against my bedroom window that October evening, each drop carrying the weight of what was about to happen. I sat cross-legged on my bed. Algebra homework scattered across my blanket, blissfully ignorant that my entire world was about to come crashing down. Thunder rumbled across the sky, and I could hear my younger sister, Emily, running down the corridor toward our mother-in-law's room. Emily was 15 years old at the time, 2 years younger than me. And she mastered the art of manipulation in ways I didn't realize until it was too late. While I spent my afternoons working at the animal shelter and getting straight A's, she formed relationships based on what others could do for her. Our mother-in-law, Blair, had always been gentler with her. Emily understood precisely which buttons to press, which tears to shed, and which stories to tell. The shouting began before I could complete the equation I was working on. Blair's words rang through the walls with a rage I had never heard directed at me before. My gut twisted as I heard my name screamed, each syllable filled with hatred. I set down my pencil, hands quivering, and moved toward the tempest developing within our house. My mother-in-law stood in the doorway, her face flushed crimson, her eyes burning with rage, causing me to step back instinctively. Emily lingered behind her, and I caught a fleeting glimpse of something in her countenance, satisfaction or triumph. Her eyes were red-rimmed and tears were still streaming down her cheeks. Yet, the way she looked at me was calculated. "You want to tell me what you did to your sister?" Blair asked, her voice shaking with wrath. I looked between them, truly perplexed. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been doing homework all afternoon. Don't you dare lie to me." The volume caused me to cringe. Emily told me everything. How could you do something so cruel to your own sister? Emily's shoulders heaved with cries that appeared scripted. "I can't believe you're denying it after what you said to me." "After you?" "After what?" My voice was smaller than I expected. "Emily, I haven't even seen you since we got home from school. What are you saying I did?" Blair approached and I could smell wine on her breath. She had been drinking again, which explained the violent reaction, but made the situation far more perilous. When she drank, rationality faded and emotion took over entirely. "She told me that you have been harassing her for weeks. Stealing her belongings, spreading stories about her at school. Telling her she is useless and that no one in this family wants her around." Blair shoved her finger at my chest with each accusation. "And today, when she confronted you about it, you told her she should just disappear. Because everyone would be happier without her." The words struck me like physical blows. None of this was true. Not one syllable. I had never spoken anything like that to Emily or anybody else. If anything, I've been going out of my way to be supportive. Helping her with her homework when she struggled. Defending her when kids at school made fun of her braces. Mother-in-law, that's not, I would never say those things. You know me. You know I wouldn't. I know you're standing here lying to my face while your sister is falling apart. Blair's hand flew up and for a terrifying second I thought she was going to slap me. She had never raised her hand to me before. But nothing about this situation felt familiar. Gab. The words were soft yet they were more impactful than her shouting. "What?" My voice was almost a whisper. "Get out of my house. Each phrase felt like a different verdict. I will not have someone who treats family like this under my roof. You want to be cruel. You want to destroy your sister's mental health. You can do it somewhere else. Outside, the storm was intensifying. Rain beat across the windows while lightning highlighted the lowering sky. It was about 6:30 p.m. The temperature was falling quickly. And I had nowhere to go. Mother-in-law, please. It's pouring outside. Can we just talk about this? Let me explain. There's nothing to explain. Emily told me everything, and unlike you, she doesn't lie. Blair crossed her arms, her stance firm. You have 12 minutes to pack a bag and leave. If you're not gone by then, I'm calling the police and having you removed. I silently begged Emily to confess the truth and put an end to this madness before it escalated. She met my eyes for a brief period. And what I saw there chilled me more than the prospect of being out in the rain. She was not going to say anything. She had orchestrated the entire thing. And she was going to let it unfold just as she had intended. My father, Dean, was away on business. He traveled extensively for his consulting work, often for days or weeks at a time. He wouldn't be home until the weekend, which was 5 days away. I considered calling him. But Blair had already returned to her bedroom and dismissed me completely. I walked through my room in a fog. Placing clothes into my school backpack with trembling hands, my phone, charger, toothbrush, the emergency cash I kept in my desk drawer, and the $100 I had saved from babysitting. I grabbed my jacket, knowing it wouldn't be enough protection from the cold outside. Emily entered my doorway as I was zipping up the bag. Maybe this will teach you to be nicer. She murmured softly, but clearly enough for me to hear. The tears had dried up, and her face was serene and controlled. Why? Came out broken. Why are you doing this? She shrugged and leaned against the doorframe. You've always been the favorite. Perfect grades, perfect daughter. Everyone always talking about how wonderful you are. Maybe now mother-in-law will see you're not as great as everyone thinks. Before I could react, Blair's voice came from downstairs. Time's up. I walked past Emily down the stairs and ripped open the front door. My mother-in-law stood in the living room archway. Arms still crossed, checking to make sure I had left. The disappointment and disgust in her eyes hurt more than anything she had done or said. I love you, mother-in-law. I tried one more time. Please don't do this. Out. Now. I opened the door and the wind blew rain into my face. I went onto the porch and heard the door slam behind me, followed by the distinct click of the lock activating. Standing there in the deluge, my backpack already soaked. I had never felt more abandoned in my life. The trek to the bus stop took 7 minutes but felt like hours. Within the first block, my footwear were soaked, making each step uncomfortable. The jacket I grabbed was ineffective against the strong rain. Water flowed down my face, mixed with tears that I couldn't hold back. I had no strategy and no destination. My best friend, Ronan, lived 4 miles away. But I couldn't just show up at her house without an explanation. And how could I explain what had just occurred? My grandmother resided in Florida and was too far away to help. My Aunt Serafina moved to California last year. Everyone I could think of to call would ask questions I couldn't answer. The bus shelter offered little protection from the elements. I sat on the metal bench, brought my knees to my chest, and tried to think. My phone displayed 6:50 p.m. I opened my father's contact list and hovered my fingertips over the call button. He told us during breakfast before leaving that he had meetings all evening. But did this qualify as an emergency? Before I could make a decision, my phone vibrated with an incoming SMS. My mother-in-law's name flashed on the screen and, for a brief moment, I believed she had realized her error. That she was calling me back home. And that this nightmare was over. The message caused my blood to run cold. Wow, it was perfect. Have you seen her face? I've never seen anyone look that sad. She honestly assumed I'd let her explain. Smiley face emoji. Smiley face emoji. Smiley face emoji. My hands became numb. This was not intended for me. The letter was plainly intended for Emily. But mother-in-law sent it to me by mistake. Most likely because our names were close to each other on her contacts. A second message arrived immediately. Delete the wrong individual. Then a third. Don't tell your father about this. I stared at the screen. Rain pouring down around me as the entire scale of what had happened became painfully clear. It wasn't simply Emily's lie. My mother-in-law was in on it. This was something they planned jointly. The phony allegations, the staged fury threw me into a tempest. It had all been planned precisely to harm me. My telephone rang. Blair's name displayed on the screen. I didn't respond. She called 7 times in fast succession. Each call went to voicemail. Text messages began pouring in. Answer the phone right now. This is not humorous. Call me back. You are overreacting. It was only a joke. Fine, be dramatic. You can return home once you've finished being ridiculous. I turned off my phone and sat in the dimly lit bus shelter, watching headlights blur through rain-streaked plastic walls. Something basic had broken within me. Not my heart. That would have been cleaner and simpler. This was deeper. A complete breakdown of trust. So that I could physically feel where my family used to be inside my chest. And only discovered empty space. A city bus arrived and the driver stared at me with alarm. You getting along, honey? You are completely saturated. I had no idea where the bus was headed, but I got on anyway, paying the fare with wet dollar bills from my backpack. The driver, an elderly woman named Carol based on her name tag, frowned at my appearance. You okay? You want me to call someone for you? I am fine. I lied. I'm just meeting my father at the next station. She didn't seem convinced, but she nodded and shifted the bus into gear. I took a seat toward the back and tried to decide what to do next. The phone messages ran over in my head, each syllable a new injury. It was only a joke. They had tossed me out into the storm as a joke. The bus went past places I barely recognized. And I rode to the end of the line with no clear plan. When Carol announced the final stop, she approached me rather than simply escorting me away. Sweetheart, I'm not sure what's going on. But I've been driving this route for 18 years and know what a troubled youngster looks like. She gave me a card with a phone number printed in neat handwriting. That is the Youth Crisis Hotline. They can help you figure out what to do and find a safe place to stay. Kindly call them. I took the card, whispered my thanks, and strolled back into the rain. The storm had not let up at all. If anything, it appeared angrier than before. I found myself roaming aimlessly. Muscle memory taking me through places I'd known my entire life, but suddenly seemed strange and hostile. Everything familiar has become untrustworthy. Eventually, my roaming led me to the animal shelter, where I volunteer every Saturday. The structure was dark and locked, but the covered entrance offered protection from the elements. I slumped against the wall, backpack alongside me, and eventually let myself fall apart. The tears fell silently, racking my body with uncontrollable sobs. 17 years old. Discarded like junk because my sister craved attention and my mother-in-law thought it was amusing. Hours passed in a haze of cold and anguish. I must have drifted into a weary half-sleep, because I was startled awake by the sound of approaching footsteps. My heart raced with panic until I recognized Mr. Harris, the shelter's night security guard. Freya, what are you doing here? His sweet face wrinkled with concern as he noticed my drenched garments and obvious distress. You, child, are frozen. Come in right now. He unlocked the door and led me inside the shelter's foyer, quickly draping a blanket around my shoulders. The warmth of the structure was nearly painful against my cold flesh. I'll make you some tea and then you'll tell me what happened, Mr. Harris stated firmly yet compassionately. And don't even think about telling me you're fine because I have 4 daughters of my own and I know that look. The whole story spelled out while I sat in his office, hands wrapped around a mug of hot tea. I couldn't quite stop shaking enough to drink. He listened without interrupting, his gaze darkening with each detail I recounted. Do you still have the messages your mother-in-law sent by accident? I turned off my phone hours ago, but when I put it back on, I found 50 missed calls and more than 120 text messages. The majority were from Blair, ranging from angry to threatening to almost panicked. Emily sent me a couple messages telling me I was being immature. There were no apologies, but the original messages remained, providing unambiguous evidence of their actions. I need you to do something for me, Mr. Harris explained. Seriously, I need you to allow me to call your father right now. What your mother-in-law did was not only cruel, but it was also unlawful. You're a minor, and she can't simply kick you out of your home. Storm or not, joke or not, he's in California for business. He cannot. Then he needs to know what's going on in his home while he's away. Mr. Harris had already reached for his office phone. What is his number? My father answered the second ring, his voice sluggish from sleep. It was past 2:30 a.m. in California. Hello, Mr. Anderson. This is Michael Harris. I am the night security guard at the Riverside Animal Shelter, where your daughter Freya volunteers. I have her with me and there is a situation that you should be aware of immediately. I could hear my father's voice change from sleepy perplexity to acute attentiveness. Freya, what is wrong? Is she hurt? Mr. Harris handed me the telephone. You tell him. He needs to hear it from you. My voice broke with the first word and everything started rushing out again. Emily's falsehoods, Blair's fury, and being flung into the storm. The text exchanges that indicated the entire situation had been arranged. My father's breathing became heavier with each statement. I'm going to ask you a question. And I need you to tell me the absolute truth, he replied. When I finished, his voice was calm, but I could detect rage beneath. Did you say or do any of the things Emily accused you of? No, none of it. I swear, Dad. I believe you. The conviction in his voice brought tears to my eyes again. I'm flying on the next available aircraft, and I'll be home by morning. In the meantime, I'm phoning your aunt, Serafina, who lives 25 minutes from the shelter. She'll come fetch you, and you'll stay with her until I arrive. Don't go home. Do not respond to any text from your mother-in-law or sister. Do you understand? Yes. I put Mr. Harris back on the phone. I passed over the phone and listened. To my father described the problem to someone he'd never met, making arrangements to ensure my immediate safety. When Mr. Harris hung up, he smiled slightly. Your dad sounds like a good man. He's scared for you, but he's handling it. Your aunt is on her way. She should be here in about 35 minutes. Aunt Serafina arrived in 30 minutes. Still wearing her pajamas with a raincoat thrown over them. She took one glance at me and drew me into a strong hug, which made me feel safe for the first time in hours. Oh, sweetie. Oh, my beautiful child. Blair jerked back, hands on my shoulders, eyes flaming. You are secure now. You are coming home with me, and no one will hurt you again. Her home was cozy and quiet. She led me to the guest room, gave me dry clothes that were too big, but incredibly soft, and sat with me as I attempted to eat the soup she had heated up. I could not take more than a few nibbles. Try to get some rest, she said, pulling blankets around me like a young child. Your father will be here soon, and then we'll figure out what happens next. I slept fitfully. Nightmares blending with memories until I couldn't tell them apart. When I awoke, the bleak morning light streamed through unfamiliar curtains. My father's deep rumble and Serafina's gentler answers echoed below. I found them in the kitchen. My father looked like he had aged 5 years overnight, his eyes red-rimmed and weary. When he saw me, he took 3 strides across the room and embraced me. He mumbled, "I'm so sorry," into my hair. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. That I didn't see what was going on. And that you had to go through it alone." We sat at Serafina's kitchen table, and I showed him the text messages. I saw his jaw tighten as he read the evidence of Blair and Emily's actions. The casual brutality reflected in those laughing emoji. "This ends now," he remarked gently. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. What your mother-in-law did constitutes child endangerment and neglect. Those text messages prove premeditation, which makes it worse." "What does that mean?" I inquired. "It means we're documenting everything. It means I'm filing for emergency custody of you. It means your mother-in-law is going to face consequences for what she's done." He stared at me with a soft and determined expression. "And it means you get to decide how much contact you want with her and Emily going forward. If the answer is none, I will support that completely." We drove to the residence later that morning. My father had called ahead to let mother-in-law know that he was coming to collect my possessions and that I would no longer be residing there. She attempted to disagree, arguing that I was being overdramatic about a trivial prank, but he cut her off. "Well, discuss the legality of your harmless prank with a lawyer I've retained," he said before hanging up. Blair and Emily were in the living room when we arrived. My mother-in-law's face was splotchy from sobbing, and her hair was uncombed. Emily sat on the couch, arms crossed with an attitude that said she was the wrong person in this scenario. "Dean, thank goodness." Blair approached him. "Maybe you can talk some sense into your daughter. She's completely overreacted to a joke and now she's stopped talking." My father's voice was icy. "Right now, before you say something else that my lawyer will be very interested to hear." Blair's mouth jerked shut. She looked between us as if she realized for the first time that excuses and explanations would not be enough to get through this. "Freya is going to pack her things and then we're leaving. Dad said, you and I will communicate through attorneys from this point forward regarding custody arrangements and the legal consequences of your actions." "Legal consequences?" Blair asked, raising his voice. It was a joke. We were going to let her back in after an hour. Let her see that we pranked her. She wasn't supposed to run off and make this huge dramatic thing. You threw a 17-year-old child out of her home during a severe thunderstorm, based on fabricated accusations. Then sent text messages laughing about her distress. My father's control was remarkable. His rage was restrained, but obviously visible. "That's not a prank. That's child abuse. And those text messages are evidence of premeditation." I'd never seen my mother-in-law look this pale. "You can't be serious. You're going to involve lawyers over this. You involved the police in your threats to call them if Freya didn't leave fast enough." He said, "You made this legal the moment you did that." I left them arguing in the living area and went to my room. Looking around at the room I'd been in for 17 years. All I could think about was how much I wanted to get out of there. I packed systematically, clothes, books, the images I treasured, my laptop, and the jewelry box my grandma gave me. Everything that mattered fit into 2 suitcases and a couple of cartons. As I stuffed clothing into my luggage, my hands came across the sweater Blair had given me for Christmas last year. She had made a big deal about choosing it out, stating she had spent weeks looking for the ideal hue. I held it for a bit before dropping it on the floor. She may keep the gifts. The walls were adorned with images and trophies from track meetings, honor roll certificates, and volunteer recognition awards. All proof of a life I'd worked hard to create. None of this mattered when Emily decided she wanted to bring me down. I took down the images that only showed myself and my father. leaving the family photos hung. Those belonged to a version of us that no longer existed. My phone was continually buzzing in my pocket. I took it out and saw texts from classmates I barely knew. People from school who had somehow heard about what had occurred. In terms of rumor, little communities moved quickly. I turned off notifications and continued packing. The jewelry box held more than simply accessories. Inside was a locket that my grandmother had worn every day, until she handed it to me on my 15th birthday. For my serious granddaughter, she replied, smiling. The one who thinks before she speaks and loves without conditions. Blair rolled her eyes at the sentence, accusing Grandma of favoritism. Perhaps she had been. Perhaps she noticed something in our family dynamics that I had overlooked. I discovered my old journals at the back of my closet. Spiral notebooks containing years of thoughts and feelings. Part of me wanted to leave them behind, erase that history completely. But these were mine, proof that I existed as me before everything went wrong. I put them into the box I was filling. The door creaked and I tensed, anticipating Emily. Instead, my father entered the room. His presence filled the entryway, substantial and reassuring in ways I sorely needed. "How are you holding up?" he said calmly. "I don't know yet," I admitted. Part of me still cannot believe this is happening. He entered the room and picked up one of the boxes I'd packed. "I should have seen this coming. The way your mother-in-law constantly made excuses for Emily's behavior. The way she downplayed your accomplishments as if they weren't important. I convinced myself I was imagining the partiality. You travel a lot for work. You weren't here to see everything. And that's not an excuse." His voice was tinged with remorse, which I did not want him to feel. "I'm your father. I should have paid better attention. I should have questioned why you always seemed a little separate from them. Like you were being careful all the time." He was correct about the last section. I had been walking on eggshells and hadn't completely realized I was navigating. I was always careful not to let my triumphs overshadow Emily's problems. Downplaying my accomplishments so Blair wouldn't make those remarks about how not everyone is naturally gifted. I apologized for things I hadn't done just to retain the peace in the house. "What will happen now?" I inquired about the custody situation. "I mean, the lawyer I dealt with specializes in family law. She plans to submit emergency custody paperwork on Monday morning, citing child endangerment. The text messages your mother-in-law sent are smoking gun proof. No court will look at a parent laughing about tossing their child out in a storm and believe it's appropriate behavior. Will I have to see them in court or something? There will be a hearing. Yes, you'll have to tell the judge your story. But I'll be by your side the entire while. So will our lawyer." He sat on the box and stared at me straight. "Freya, I need you to understand something. What happened wasn't your fault, not any part of it. Emily lied because she wanted to hurt you and your mother-in-law participated." He was no longer battling with words. "I honestly don't know why she did what she did. But none of it reflects on you." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Do you want to take your desk?" he inquired, evidently hoping to give me an opportunity to gather myself. "It won't fit in my car today. But I can rent a truck and come back for furniture if you want it." I stared at the desk where I'd spent endless hours studying, writing, and fantasizing about college, careers, and futures that seemed attainable when I was alone in this room. "No, I don't want any of it. Just what fits in these bags and boxes." We worked silently for a time, packing up the parts of my life that still mattered. My father operated with steady efficiency. But I noticed him pause occasionally, his expression deepening as if he was recalling fresh information about Blair's actions. "She called me 20 times last night," he said ultimately. "After you talked to me and I said I was getting on a plane." She started with anger. How dare I make this into such a big deal? How I was undermining her parenting. How you'd always been overdramatic. Then came bargaining. Worked silently for a time, packing up the parts of my life that still mattered. My father operated with steady efficiency. But I noticed him pause occasionally, his expression deepening as if he was recalling fresh information about Blair's actions. She promised it would never happen again. Swear she'd go to therapy. Begged me not to involve lawyers. What did you say? I asked. I told her she should have thought about consequences before she threw our daughter away like garbage. His fists curled around the book he was clutching. Then I hung up and bought a plane ticket. I've never been so angry in my entire life. Freya. The things I wanted to say to her, he grumbled. The lawyer advised me not to communicate with her directly anymore. Everything goes through attorneys now. Is that why she looked so scared when we got here? She received the preliminary custody filing this morning. Hand-delivered by a process server at 7:30. She knows this isn't going away. That she can't charm or manipulate her way out of legal consequences. He mustered a gloomy smile. Your mother has always been very good at making people believe her version of events. But judges care about facts. And the facts are damning. We moved the first load of boxes downstairs. Blair was nowhere to be seen. But I could hear her crying in the kitchen, which sounded theatrical and loud. Emily remained where we had left her, browsing through her phone with practiced disinterest. Dad's really doing this? She inquired, not looking up. Taking you away over something so stupid. My father's voice was as icy as I had ever heard it. Emily, I strongly suggest you stop talking. Anything you say right now will make this situation worse for you and your mother-in-law. She eventually looked up and something about his expression made her shudder. I was just trying to know exactly what you were trying to do. You wanted attention. You wanted to hurt your sister and you didn't care about the consequences. Congratulations. You got what you wanted. He pointed to the kitchen where Blair's wailing persisted. You have your mother-in-law all to yourself now. I hope you enjoy it. We made 4 more journeys, filling the trunk and rear seat to capacity. Blair came from the kitchen on her final excursion, mascara pouring down her face. Please don't do this, she whispered. Dean, I'm sorry. I made a terrible mistake. But she's my daughter. You can't just take her from me. My father's laugh was harsh and unfunny. I'm not taking her from you. You threw her away. I'm just giving her a home where she's wanted and safe. It was supposed to be funny. We were going to surprise her. Let her see we decorated her room, that it was all just a prank to teach her. Blair's voice broke. She wasn't supposed to disappear for hours. She wasn't supposed to involve strangers and make this into some huge legal thing. Teach her what exactly? I asked myself. They both turned and looked at me. What lesson was I supposed to learn from being thrown out in the storm? Blair's mouth opened and closed. I've been distant lately, spending all your time on school work in that shelter. I wanted you to appreciate your family more, to see that you needed us. So, you and Emily conspired to terrorize me. Then laughed about how pathetic I looked when you succeeded. My voice was suddenly steady and detached. And you genuinely thought that would make me appreciate you more. You're twisting everything. It wasn't like that. I have the text messages, the ones where you laughed about my face. Where you told Emily it was perfect. Where you reminded her to delete the evidence. That's exactly what it was like. Blair's face wrinkled. I was drunk. I didn't mean those things the way they sounded. Mother-in-law, stop. The word felt strange in my mouth now. Too intimate for who she had become. Stop making excuses. Stop trying to rewrite what happened. You did this. You chose this. And now you get to live with the consequences. My father placed his hand on my shoulder. We're done here. Freya, get in the car. As we pulled out of the driveway, I noticed Blair standing on the porch, still crying and acting like the victim in her own tragedy. Emily had joined her, arms crossed. and watched us depart with a look I couldn't interpret. I did not feel triumphant or vindicated. I felt exhausted and hollowed out. Like if something important had been cut away. And I was still figuring out what remained. Emily entered in my doorway just as I was finished. "This is all your fault," she said. "If you just come back and played along, everything would be fine. But you had to be difficult about it." I glanced at my young sister, whom I had spent my entire life trying to protect and assist, and felt nothing. "Why did you do it? Really?" She shrugged. "I wanted to see if I could. I wanted to see if mother-in-law would choose me over you. And she did." "I hope that was worth it," I murmured gently. "I hope having mother-in-law all to yourself makes you happy because you've lost me. Permanently." Her expression flickered with something. Possibly sorrow or irritation at not receiving the desired reply. "You're being so dramatic." "I'm being realistic. You and mother-in-law showed me exactly who you are and what I mean to you. I'm done pretending we're a family." I carried my luggage downstairs. My father stood outside the door, arms crossed, having clearly won the dispute. "Are you ready?" he inquired gently. I nodded. We moved everything into his car while Blair stood at the doorway, crying and trying one more time to persuade him that he was exaggerating. "Please don't do this," she begged. "She's my daughter. You can't just take her away from me." "You threw her away," my father stated simply. "I'm just making it official." We drove away, and I did not glance back. The following months brought about changes that I could not have predicted on that stormy night. Living with my father in his downtown apartment seemed awkward at first. The space was sleek and minimalist, unlike the house I grew up in. He'd transformed his home office into a bedroom for me, apologizing for how sparse it was. "We'll get you whatever you need," he promised that first week. "Furniture, decorations, whatever makes this feel like home." But I realized I didn't want much. The simplicity was a welcome change from Blair's chaotic home, where every surface was covered in decorative artifacts and family photos that now felt like lies. I mounted my honor roll awards on one wall, but my books on the shelf he'd built and called it finished. School became more complicated than I had anticipated. The story of what happened had spread like wildfire through the hallways, evolving with each recounting. Some versions had me fleeing over a minor quarrel. Others stated that I had been molested for years and had finally escaped. Some people said that I made everything up to get attention. My best friend, Ronan, cornered me at my locker on my first day back. "Why didn't you call me?" she insisted. "I would have come to get you. You know that, right? You didn't have to sit in a bus shelter all night." "I wasn't thinking clearly," I acknowledged. "I just needed to get away from there." She held me tightly. "Your mother-in-law is insane. Everyone's talking about what she did. The text messages are everywhere." My stomach sank. "What do you mean? Everywhere?" "Someone leaked them online. They're all over social media. Everyone's seen them." I took out my phone and searched for my mother-in-law's name. Sure enough, images of her communications had been shared hundreds of times, along with angry comments about child abuse and poor parenting. Someone even made a hashtag. The story had gone viral locally, with news sources using it as an example of a social media prank gone wrong. Blair must have felt mortified. Her entire social circle would have witnessed the evidence of what she had done. Read about her nasty laughing in her own words. Part of me felt validated. A larger part of me was horrified that this private misery had become public entertainment. I did not disclose them. I stated to Ronan, "I don't know who did." "Does it matter? She deserves it. What she did to you was evil." The attention was tremendous. Teachers stared at me with sympathy. Students I barely knew approached me in the halls to offer encouragement. or ask intrusive questions about that night. I started having lunch at the library to avoid the cafeteria chatter. My consistently high marks became my haven. Homework was something I could handle, problems with clear solutions and definitive answers. My father was concerned because I immersed myself into my studies with such zeal. You're allowed to just exist for a while. Dad reminded me gently one evening as I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by textbooks at midnight. You don't have to be perfect right now. I don't know how to just exist, I told myself. Every time I stopped working, I started thinking about what happened. And I couldn't. My words were raspy. I need to stay busy. He sat down across from me and pushed my calculus book aside. We need to talk about therapy. Dr. Harrison comes highly recommended. She specializes in family trauma and I think talking to her might help. I'm fine. You're not sleeping. You're having panic attacks when it rains. You flinch every time your phone buzzes because you think it might be your mother-in-law trying to contact you again. His gaze was affectionate but strong. You're surviving, which is incredible. But you deserve more than just survival. I began seeing Dr. Harrison twice every week. During the first few sessions, I scarcely spoke. She didn't push, just sat with me in peaceful stillness, occasionally offering soft questions that I could answer or ignore. You're carrying a lot of guilt, she commented at our fourth encounter. Guilt that doesn't belong to you. I keep thinking about what I could have done differently. If I'd just gone to Emily when I got home from school. Talked to her before she had a chance to make up those lies. If I'd been a better sister, maybe she wouldn't have wanted to hurt me. Do you genuinely believe you deserved what happened to you? I was stunned when I heard the question. No, but I should have seen it coming. Should have recognized that Emily resented me, that your mother-in-law favored her. I was naive. You were 15 years old and believed that your family loved you. That is not naive. That is normal. Dr. Harrison leaned forward slightly. What your mother-in-law and sister did wasn't a failure on your part. It was a choice they made, a cruel, calculated choice. You can acknowledge your feelings about wishing things were different without accepting blame for their actions. The chats helped gradually. She provided me strategies to deal with the fear that arose whenever I saw someone who resembled Blair in public or heard Emily's name mentioned at school. We focused on rebuilding my faith in people, believing that not everyone would betray me in the same manner that my family had. Meanwhile, my father sued for divorce, citing the incident as proof that Blair was unsuitable to be a parent. Her text messages constituted central evidence, making it impossible for her to explain away. Her lawyer attempted to argue that they had been taken out of context. But there was no context to justify joking about throwing your child into a storm. I testified during the custody hearing, recounting all that occurred. The judge's look became more harsh as I showed him the texts, explained Emily's lies, and described the hours I'd spent alone in the rain. Mrs. Anderson, the prosecutor replied, I've presided over many difficult cases, but I have rarely seen such calculated cruelty toward a child. Your actions weren't just negligent, they were deliberately harmful. The court finds your explanation of this being a prank to be neither credible nor relevant. Even if we accepted that characterization, subjecting a minor to this treatment would still constitute abuse. He granted my father full custody. Blair received supervised visitation, which I declined to engage in. Emily, now facing the consequences of her actions, attempted to apologize in a letter. I returned it unread. My mother-in-law's friends and family members who learned what had transpired divided into factions. Some accepted her explanation that I had exaggerated things, that she had made a mistake but did not deserve to lose her daughter. Others, particularly after seeing the text messages, severed relations with her completely. My grandmother stopped talking to her for 6 months. Serafina became a constant presence in my life, the maternal figure I needed. She assisted me in finding a therapist to help me understand what had happened, supported me through the subsequent nightmares and panic attacks, and celebrated my admittance to college 3 years later. The storm that night was scary, but the true damage had been done by those who were supposed to love me the most, who used my terror for their own enjoyment. It took years for me to regain faith in others and think that those who claimed to care about me truly did. I'm 29 now and work as a veterinarian. Those Saturday volunteer hours at the shelter turned into a job. I've spent my life surrounded by folks that appreciate honesty and kindness. I'm married to someone who finds the concept of treating family as a joke baffling. Blair attempted to reconnect several times throughout the years. Cards on birthdays and holidays. Emails requesting another opportunity. And notes stating she has changed. I do not respond. Emily contacted me after she got engaged, begging me to attend her wedding and unable to understand why I wouldn't celebrate with her. I replied with a one-line note. You made your choice that night. I'm making mine now. Every Sunday, my father and Serafina join me for a walk with my dogs. We eat dinner together once a week. We celebrate holidays as a family who decided to be together rather than merely because we share DNA. And on stormy evenings when thunder rumbles across the sky, I stand by my window and remember the girl who ventured out into the storm with only a backpack and $100. She survived. She created something better than what she had lost.